So let's talk about Alibaba. Welcome to the show and welcome to Bloomberg New Economy Forum, of course. The growing unrest in Hong Kong, more violence, the standoff really seems to have no solution, at least at this moment. So why list in Hong Kong now?
Well, essentially, the way that they're listing is purely electronic. So, if you remember back to the 2007 IPO in Hong Kong, lines outside, that wouldn't be able to happen right now, obviously. So it's interesting, one, that this is a purely electronic online IPO, but also the timing, of course. It's a shot of confidence, of course, in Hong Kong as a financial center. It's basically bringing together the information zone and the trading zone. In a sense, trading has always been in New York for the stock since the 2014 IPO. But the information zone is really China. I mean, Alibaba is fundamentally focused on the Chinese market. It has international aspects, but it's really focused on China. People in China know it a lot better than even institutional investors might have to learn in the US.
So how much does this help Alibaba in the eyes of Beijing now?
It's certainly not unhelpful. And these days, as we are hearing here, the power of the state, the power of the party, one has to, follow the party line or certainly get ahead of the party line to some extent. Jack Ma's always, I think, interpreted pretty well where things are moving, both in business and in government. And so this is a helpful move, I think. But it also makes sense for them to have almost round-the-clock trading of the stock and also tapping into those Chinese mainland consumers who want to buy in through the Direct Connect, Stock Connect program.
Do you think that eventually, though, the unrest in Hong Kong, especially now that the U.S. is planning to sign into law the Human Rights and Democracy Act, could it have a negative impact in the Hong Kong listing, given that there seems to be an aversion to mainland Chinese companies right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's still in flux, what the Senate has signed versus what the House and what the President's going to do, because we still have the trade talks ongoing. So I wouldn't say it's a fait accompli right now, but certainly that's into the mix. But there's a school in Washington that really wants to, stop Chinese companies rising, even as we heard from Charlene Barshevsky this morning, questioning really how private are Chinese private companies. That's a mainstream school of thought now in the U.S. And that's the challenge for China, because the private sector has been the main growth driver of innovation, jobs. So, it's up to now to see whether China is going to make changes. And with respect to Hong Kong, we're not seeing anything positive right now.
We have seen such a big success for Alibaba, especially recently. Their Singles Day sales were really phenomenal. I had one analyst tell me that was all because of big data, of the way that they analyze consumers. You have a panel right now on big data protecting the individual. Where does the fine line lie when it comes to privacy and what the government can do, especially in the context that we are inside China?
Correct. So big data is never bigger than in China because we have these two very dominant companies, Alibaba, Tencent, but also and others that are nipping at their heels. But also we have logistics and finance integrated. So the fact that Cainiao, which is the logistics arms of Alibaba, is involved, as well as Alipay. When you triangulate all this information, you are able to anticipate what consumers are doing, what they may not even know, right? So that's the dream, for e-commerce, really. But it's going to spread into other areas. We're seeing it in fintech. We're seeing it obviously with cloud computing, obviously new drivers. So, and yet we haven't seen the same backlash in China that we have in the West towards tech, the techlash, if you will. Partly because I think a lot of Chinese consumers associate technology with positive changes in their lives, tangible improvements. Whereas I think in the US there's been more of a questioning of the power of these big tech platforms.
As we see this bifurcation now with the China-US trade war going on, this bifurcation in tech even,
right.
How is this affecting the dynamics of where we're headed in this global tech battle?
Yeah, it's almost like a trifurcation. I'm not sure that's a word, but I mean, what does the rest of the world do, right? They're looking at US and China, and whether it's Huawei at the infrastructure level, whether it's TikTok at the application level, yeah, there are hard questions to be asked now. But in some cases where the US is not actively offering an alternative, in the case of 5G for Huawei, do countries hold back? Or do they work in ways like the UK and Germany is now wrestling with to work with Chinese companies? It's a massive debate because none of us, it's a bit like the situation with Hong Kong. We assume by now that mainland China would be going in a different direction politically in terms of opening up and so on. And that's now happening globally. That this question of where is China heading? Is this the China that we were expecting to show up? And that's the debate here.